I wasn't here for Shabbat a couple of weeks ago. It happened to be the Shabbat after I wasn't here for Shabbat because I got COVID. I was planning on being away the next Shabbat because I was with my grandmother and my family in Virginia. That Sunday, we had my grandfather's unveiling, as this week to come will observe his first yard site. And throughout that, part of the unveiling, which is a relatively modern custom in Judaism, it was just our family, and we were at the cemetery, and my children specifically were asking for me to tell stories of their pop-up of my grandfather, mostly because they had very limited memories based on their age, especially after not seeing him during, this period of the pandemic before he had passed away. Sometimes when you're young, you have short memory spans, and some of those memories, it can't go back far enough. So I'm, sharing memories about my grandfather with them, and I talked about how I remember as a kid, when he had 2 bad knees, I would go to his house and want to play catch, and he would still play catch with me, and I wasn't very good at throwing, and I would throw it, and it would miss his glove, and he was willing to play catch, but he couldn't run after the ball, so I would run after the ball and get it and put it in his glove, and then he'd throw it back, but because he so wanted to play catch with me, he wasn't going to let his mobility challenges stop him from doing so. And I told a story about how he never liked to watch scary movies, how he would always watch Shirley Temple. That was his favorite movie, because to him, he said there was enough scariness in the world, enough to be fearful for in the world. When he wanted to watch a movie, he wanted to smile and think of simplistic joy. And then I told a story about how when he was a young child and his family owned a candy store, and it was his job, mostly based on his size, rather large belly at the time, to dress up as Santa Claus every year for the candy store for all the children during the Christmas season. And I had heard that story so many times the way I told it. I talked about what the store looked like and how many different types of candy were on the wall, and what it smelled like when you walked into the candy store, and how it was always crowded, and where it was on Cedar Lane and Teaneck. And Hannah, who had just turned 5, asked me, well, what was the candy store like? And then I realized that I was telling a story and sharing a memory of something that had happened decades and decades and decades before I was even born. That this memory that I had been told my whole life, that resonated as a memory of my grandfather just as much as memories that I myself experienced, I wasn't there for, and yet I felt like I was. It was a memory that was just as much a part of my memory bank as those that I were and was present for. We're told an odd command on Passover. Each and every Shabbat, when we say Kiddush, we observe Shabbat, and we say Zecher L'Yetziat Mitzrayim, to remember the Exodus from Egypt. That we're supposed to remember something that we weren't around for, that we weren't alive for, that maybe happened, maybe never happened, depending on your understanding of Torah. And yet, we do the rituals that we do in remembrance of this thing that happened. But on Passover, we're commanded that in every generation, we should see ourselves as if we were part of that Exodus experience. That we're reminded that memories that are not necessarily our own become our own. And they sit with us just as much as those that were never ours. And that really ultimately is the beauty of memory. That I can tell you the smells of that candy store, and I can tell you exactly what it looked like and where it was located. And that store was closed and became a diner, and then a bakery, and then a coffee shop, all long before I ever visited the location of where it once stood. But that memory is forever my memory. And so, on this holiday where ritually we're so focused on memory, a memory that wasn't necessarily our own, so much so that we use ritual objects of salt water and matzah and charoset to trigger our memories, to help us remember something that maybe was always there and bring it to the forefront of our minds. In this holiday that focuses so much on memory and taking on other memories to make them our own, we approach the part of our service on this last day of the holiday where we've spent all week remembering. And we have our Yizkor service when we remember our loved ones. For those of us here whose losses are so recent and sudden and unexpected, any memory cuts so deep. That sometimes, so much so, we forget that we're living in a world without our loved ones physically with us. But the truth is, for those of us who mourn somebody who passed away years ago, we still sometimes forget that we're living in a world without them with us. Because so many of our memories, so much joy that we have had in our lives, so many of the memories that we reflect on when we need a smile on our faces, they may have happened years ago, decades ago, or weeks ago. But they feel as if they were yesterday. And then there are those times, as time passes, where it becomes harder to remember. When so much of our lives have been lived without them physically here. And so much of our lives are now built on a world that they did not know and get to experience with us. That we dig deep to try to remember our loved ones. Imagine them in our world, in our lives at this moment. Or we share those memories with future generations to try to explain how special our loved ones were. Our parents, our spouses, our siblings, our children, our dearest of friends. Try to explain how special they were to people generations later who never got to meet them. And we share our memories, whatever we can hold on to, with them. And in doing so, those memories become their memories. Become the stories that they tell, as if they were there. Rabbi Deborah Reed Blank refers to the rituals of Passover as anamnesis, that we aren't supposed to reimagine or reinterpret or reenact the Exodus, but that our minds work in a way that when we ritualize something, we're able to trigger something in our minds and remember something that even if we didn't experience it ourselves, as if we ourselves were there. And so, as we begin our Yizkor service, we remember, but also, I want to task each of us to not just remember. I want to task each of us to think of the memories we want to pass on, to share with those who didn't get to experience those memories, so that those memories, our memories, also become their memories. For as long as our memories become their memories, then our loved ones' memories remain for a blessing, that their souls are forever bound up in the bond of our lives, and that they forever rest in peace. Amen.